Hey guys, welcome to class. Today we're talking headsets, sealed bearing headsets. Being able to pull apart your headset and clean it out or modify a bike and change it is really fun, and a lot of people find the headset really daunting. There's a lot of parts and we see a lot of people put them together wrong. So today we're going to teach you the basic mechanics in how a headset works. This is going to be specifically for a sealed bearing headset in all modern bikes, but the same principles will apply to almost any headset on any old bike or modern bike, road or mountain. So we're going to run you through the mechanics. We're going to show you how to put it together, and we're going to give you some tips around setting the tension correctly so it's going to last really well and it's going to feel good to ride the bike. So to start with, we're going to run you through the pieces in the headset. Come over to the classroom. So right here I've got a beautiful little drawing done. The blue section is the fork and this is the head tube of the bike. The orange bits represent the parts of the headset. The headset's quite simple. We've basically got two bearings. The two bearings are these two things here. We have a crown race, which is already on the fork here. This is this part here. We have a split ring, which is this piece here. And then we have the headset top cap, which is the piece that sits on top here. So the basic concept of how the headset on a bike works is everything has a tapered angle. So when you pull it together, all the angles pull into alignment and pull into the center. So if you have a look, it all starts at the base here. So our fork here has an angled seat for the bearing. So this angled seat of the bearing, would you believe, matches the bottom of the lower headset bearing. The lower headset bearing has an angle that will sit right on top like that. Bearing sits onto the angle and that centers right down nicely snug on that. You might notice that the bearing, the other side of the bearing, has a tapered angle on the opposite side, on the outside. So this tapered angle here matches the tapered angle that we'll find in the frame. So come over here and have a look at these angles. So the bearing sits on the tapered angle and then pulls into the frame, which it matches the same angle. Then the top, we basically have a mirror image. We have an upper bearing, which will face the opposite direction. The taper on the outside will face the frame. And then we have the split ring, which is essentially the top version of what's on the fork down here. So this will slip on the top here, and that centers into the center of that angle on the bearing there. And then the last thing we have is the top cap, which is basically a seal to keep all the dirt out. So the whole headset relies on having all those angles line up so it all pulls together. One important factor to keep in mind, in modern bikes, there is actually two different angles that you can get. They come in 45 degrees and 36 degrees. So it basically means the taper is just a slight different angle. It doesn't really make any difference, but it's essential that everything matches. So if the frame is a 45, it means the bearing has to have a 45, and if the bearing's 45, this has to be 45, and everything has to match. If not 45, 36, but you just can't mix the two standards together. So if you've bought a brand new headset, it'll be fine. So let's put this thing together now. First thing I'd recommend would be lay out all your parts where you can reach them, because in this process, you'll be holding the fork whilst putting it together. So when you put your headset together, it's really important to grease basically every surface that touches. So ideal is have a grease gun, but you can apply it any way you like. So we want to put grease on this. We want to put grease in the frame. Now, we can put the bearing on. So just remember, the angle on the bottom needs to match the inner angle on this bearing. So this sits down like that, really nicely. We've already greased this one here. So now we can put this straight in and seat that into there. Next, we can install our upper bearing. And so this is going to be the reverse what we just did. So at the bottom, we had this inner angle on the fork. Now we're going to put the outer angle facing the frame, like that, leaving our inner angle exposed still. It's nice to apply some grease in here. Now we can fit our split ring. Just want to point out, someone's done a shonky job on this steer tube. It's definitely a very hack job, but it was here, so this is what you got. Next we got our top cap. This has a rubber seal inside it, so generally just go easy putting it on. You might just want to twist it on slowly and then slip that down. This particular headset requires one spacer and then the stem. So the basic concept of the headset is we are trying to pull it all together. So how we're doing that is with the top cap, we're basically trying to pull the fork tube, the steerer tube, up against the top of the stem. So to do that, either the top of the stem or the headset spacer needs to sit above the line of the steerer tube. So if you're running your stem on the very top position, so a spacer underneath, the steerer tube at the very least needs to come up to the line of the top bolt and above the top bolt here. So it really should come basically all the way up to the top of the stem. If you're running the spacer on the top, you'll need the spacer to be the top point rather than the steerer tube. This is actually preferable because now we'll have 100% clamping force on the steerer tube and the spacer on top. So once we're certain that we got the right spacing here, if we need to, we can change the spacer arrangement, put bigger or smaller ones in. We can then fit the top cap. So now we got to the top cap, it's time to tension the headset, tension the bearings. So this one here, we do it up until it's just tight enough to pull all those angles together and pull the slack out of it. So generally you only just need to do it up just firm, and that's all you're gonna need on a sealed bearing headset. Once that's done up firm, you can then move to your pinch bolts, and you're gonna wanna do an alternating pattern. So where you tighten one and then tighten the other. And then the other. And once they're torqued down to spec, use a torque wrench if you need. Then the last thing to do is just check the bearing tension and make sure it's not overly tight or not overly loose. When you have a complete bike and it's on the ground, you will be able to feel movement in the headset. Typically if you grab the front brake and rock it back and forwards. But if you have a good new headset and all the parts are correct, you should be absolutely fine with just a little bit of tension and doing it up. So hopefully now you understand the basic way that your headset goes together, and you can apply this to doing something like cleaning out the bearings after a muddy mountain bike ride, or if you're like upgrading your forks, this is the same process. So it always basically uses this concept, so pull it apart and have a look and see how you go. So now we're just up to the last step, which is go ride. So get your gear, put it on and hit the trails.